European freedom fighter from Ukraine. Give us any weapons right now. And he gave them his pen. Poems of Stus were translated professionally the first time into the German language. The Ukrainians have done a tremendous job in defending the West's freedom.
In the heart of Berlin, near the Brandenburg Gate, an exhibition dedicated to our Vasyl Stus has opened. The exhibition was organized by the Pilecki Institute, which focuses on 20th century history, particularly documenting Russia's war crimes in Ukraine. I talked with the Institute spokesperson to learn how Germans perceived the exhibition about the Ukrainian poet.
It's the first international exhibition about Vasyl Stus, a forgotten and in Western Europe largely unknown freedom fighter, a poet from Ukraine and from Europe. So we always call him European freedom fighter from Ukraine. And we showcase his life, his works, his poems, and his life story, which was one of defending the Ukrainian identity and culture, and also showing his very interesting network and European-wide associations. He was very fond of both the Polish and German culture, which makes him a particularly curious figure from our point of view. Quite typical and popular reaction that we got was that even people, including experts, writers, journalists, who are very supportive of Ukraine these days in its effort to defend itself against Russia's invasion and war of aggression, even many of them said that they had never heard about Vasyl Stus before, which is an interesting and honest reaction, but it's even more so pointing to the fact that Vasyl Stus was indeed like an empty space, empty vessel, a blind and white spot in Europe's collected memory that warranted filling in. With great satisfaction that we realized that during the opening of the Stus exhibition, we had probably record levels of visitors here. So in fact, the opening did not only take place in our main exhibition mall, but basically the whole institute was involved. We had to set up live transmission from the exhibition opening. And there's also a special event series accompanying the exhibition, including movie screenings, lectures, and also then usually, I would say, interest and attention remains pretty high. And there was also quite some media coverage, including Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, which published a I think what is really curious and interesting about Vasyl Stus is that he kind of shows that oftentimes, I would say, patriotism and humanistic universalism are not two opposite poles or ends, but they are part of the same struggle in a way. Because, of course, Vasyl Stus was very devoted to the Ukrainian language and identity. He taught Ukrainian literature and language in the Soviet Union even after 1959, when there was this whole new law that discriminated. But at the same time, he was a huge admirer of German writers, of Rilke, Goethe. He translated them into Ukrainian. And he was a huge admirer of Poland as well. He's almost jealous in a way of the solidarity movement. He recommended to his wife and son to learn Polish. He subscribed Polish magazines. And yes, I mean, for us, he's one among many important, undeservedly forgotten and unheard of freedom fighters from our region, from Eastern and Central Europe. In that sense, even though he lived in different times and his life story was different, but we see common ground there between him and Witold Pilecki. And a few days ago, there was the 35th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And as the Pilecki Institute, we were also represented in the official Berlin event series that was dedicated to this anniversary. And yeah, we said that we tried to show forgotten freedom fighters and heroes from our region who might not have directly brought about the fall of the Berlin Wall, but their kind of long-standing activism, engagement, and fearless struggle contributed to the fall of the Berlin Wall in the long term. There is an anecdote, and of which I don't know if it is true. I tried to find this in history books and never found some concluding source. But apparently the anecdote goes like this, that when there was the Hungarian uprising in 1956, prior to that, Hungary had a leader named Imre Nagy, who was a communist, but he decided to kind of join the people against the communist apparatchiks. And the anecdote says that when he was arrested by the KGB, and they told him, "Give us any weapons right now," and he gave them his pen. So, again, to be honest, I don't think this anecdote is true, because usually when there are anecdotes like this that sound too good to be true, they're not true. But yes, I think this shows that there is some truth to this. Few poems of Stus were translated professionally the first time into the German language. And you can find them in the accompanying booklet, which is available in the Pilecki Institute. We don't sell it as such. We always just ask visitors to make a contribution for like some for an Ukrainian cause, for the Ukrainian organization. So definitely, I mean, this is an exhibition documenting his life, but if you want to understand a poem's or an intellectual's life, you can't, by definition, you cannot achieve this without also delving deep into his works. You know, I think he had this, he really had a knack for aphorisms, and even like in the very first version of our press release, there was like a famous quote by Stus, who said that, "Here I am, but actually it's me and the Ukrainian nation." And I think this idea of, of course, being a strong and fearless individual, but kind of struggling in the name of your group, of your nation, that is something that rings a bell with many Poles and is also quite widespread in our region. Some of the other quotes shown in the exhibition, when he's like his letters to his son and his family, when he says that, "Listen, son, it's not always worth just to take into consideration the immediate consequences and to live a comfortable life, but it's important to be a role model also for future generations. And when people will ask, did you do your best to stand up against evil, it's important to have a track record that allows you to answer yes." It's quite unfortunate, because I think many in Europe and in the West still don't fully realize this, but I think the Ukrainians have done a tremendous job in defending the West's freedom. This is probably one of the problems with the pro-Ukrainian solidarity, that it's oftentimes still couched as some ethical solidarity and support, but it's very much in the self-interest of the West. I remember one of our tweets on Twitter that said that Kiev will fall in a few days was one of the biggest fake news of 2022. It's the exact opposite. We all hopefully we will be still in this together. Still think that the Ukrainian nation is just a huge source of inspiration, and there will be books and poems and texts written about her struggle, her and our struggle, so to speak. And also the Pilecki Institute, we will never forget the first weeks and months after the full-scale invasion, because this room here, this is our main exhibition hall, but it was also turned into a warehouse for parcels with humanitarian aid. for more than a year, and every day there were many Ukrainian organizations here. We cooperated very intensely, very deeply, and we will never forget this Ukrainian-Polish experience back then, and hopefully this will also inspire future generations.